Hey, good morning and welcome back to Questioning Sense with me, Matt. Okay, how are we doing? Well, we're doing well, still kind of missing our holiday in all honesty. Been back a few days, but it feels like we've been back for weeks. Why is that? I'm still off work, I'm looking after my son while my wife goes out and fights the good fight. So I thought I'd get another video done. Now this is an interesting one. If you've been following the channel, you'll remember a while back I popped into Atkinsons of London. I went into their shop or boutique or in the Burlington Arcade and had a wonderful morning there, sniffing and smelling and trying some of the exquisite offerings they have in the world of fragrance. Now, I think I walked away with 3 samples. I have also since been added to Atkinson's mailing list, and I think it's twice a year they send out sort of 3 samples of fragrances for you to try. So have a look on their website. I don't think you have to sign up in store. I think you can do it online. If you go to Atkinson's website, there's like a mailing list, and what they do is they send out some fragrance samples, classics and sort of their newer releases, as it were. And you get to try them, and it's a really, really interesting house. In the previous video where I sort of sampled 3, I went into a lot more history of the house. I mean, they've been around since 1799. I think Mr. Atkinson came down from Cumberland or somewhere like that and set up in London. So a real kind of sort of classic house. They're not British owned anymore, but they're still carrying on with that tradition. They also offer bespoke offerings. You can sort of have a chat with them, and I think they'll make a fragrance to suit your kind of needs or your desires, shall we say, as a one-off. I'm not entirely too sure, but have a look on the website and explore that, because there are some good things. But they have quite a large collection, and they have some really, really interesting fragrances. And of the 3 that I took away, there was one that really, really bowled me over, and that was called The Other Side of the Oud. Now, relatively recently, a bottle came up which was 97% full in a Facebook group from a really, really lovely lady who I bought. She's been a bit of a well-known figure in the UK fragrance community, and she sold me a bottle for an absolutely astonishing price. I won't embarrass you by telling you how much I paid for it, but put it this way, it was incredibly cheap. So here it is. What a beautiful bottle as well. Atkinsons, The Other Side of the Oud. Wearing it today. I've been wearing it a lot actually since I had it. If you're following us on Instagram, you'll have noticed that it's popped up as a photo a couple of times in like the last week. So it shows you how much high regard I have this in. Now, this is obviously a winter leaning fragrance. Well, not obviously, but it is a winter leaning fragrance, but I've been wearing it quite a lot, and it's on beautiful days I've been wearing it too. I don't recommend that because it was probably designed for the winter, and it might not shine quite as brightly as it will do when things are cooler. But I just love it. I'm really, really addicted to this. So the box it comes in, look at this. This is very, very rare. I'm actually going to talk about a box. I love the packaging, and it sort of slides open there. It's all very, very good quality. Beautiful stuff. Let's have another look at this bottle, because even the cap is really solid. It's heavy, it's beautiful, and then you've got sort of like a classic kind of goldy. I'm not a massive fan of gold bottles, in all honesty. They are fingerprint magnets and they always look a bit weird and a bit gaudy, but this one works really well. I like the glass bit in the middle of it there. It helps, gives it a very good quality class feel to it, which this perfume certainly is. So what we'll do, this is kind of almost a bit like a duplication of a previous review, but now I've got it and I'm wearing it and I'm really, really enjoying it. I think it warrants its own review, so it's going to get one. So this came out in 2019, which is interesting because I would have tried this last year. So when I tried it, I didn't realise it was quite as new as it was. But it's a really good one. Atkinsons have done a few ouds. I think they have His Majesty the Oud or Her Majesty the Oud. Then you have The Other Side of the Oud, and then I think there's another one called Oud Save the King. I get them a little bit confused, in all honesty, and they kind of all do this sort of very similar thing. They're a bit like my favourite from Alanique, which is Fakr Al Oud, and I think 24 Hour Scent Story, their gold one. They all kind of do that sort of spicy, vanilla-y, woodsy, oudy type fragrance. But what Atkinsons have done is they've taken this Middle Eastern vibe, this oud-centric idea of a perfume, and then they've made it very, very Western. And when I was in the store, I was talking to the chap there, really, really good guy as well. I think sales assistants often, especially by frag heads, are a little underappreciated unless they're really, really good. You know, a sales assistant in fragrance kind of falls into sort of three categories. You've got those that are mad keen on fragrances and they're really, really knowledgeable about their own line of fragrances, but they're also, you know, interested in other fragrances out there. And the guy in Atkinsons was certainly one of them. He was really, really, you know, competent with his knowledge about other fragrance houses, what else was on the market, what was new, and then he was happy to talk about Atkinsons, but was happy to talk about, you know, certain fragrances in the Atkinsons collection that I found similar to others, and he was really into chatting about that, so that was good. Then you have the other kind of sales assistants that are very, very knowledgeable about their own collection, and that's kind of it, and that's absolutely fine. And then you have the other sort of sales assistants that are kind of just going through the motions, and they're fine as well. You know, it's a tough job, so I'm never going to be bashing sales assistants, but I am going to be applauding them when they're really, really good. And the guys in Atkinsons seem to be really, really knowledgeable, so that was good. If you are in London or if you're nearby and you get a chance to go into their Burlington Arcade store, then please do, because it's a beautiful, beautiful place as well. It's really, really well designed, and it's very nice, and it feels very luxurious, and all the rest of it. So I suppose if you're looking to buy this, I mean, this is £165 a bottle from Selfridges, which is an expensive product. I mean, it's a luxury fragrance, so it is pricey. But deals can be had. I just had a quick scan online before I made the video, and you can get it a lot cheaper in a lot of other places. But as I say, I got this as a nearly full partial in a Facebook group for really, really, you know, half the price of a modern designer. So I was incredibly impressed. Anyway, so this came out in 2019, and the noses behind it are Maurice Roussel and Pierre Constantin Guéros. These are two well-known characters within the, you know, within the fragrance industry, especially Maurice Roussel. If you look at some of the fragrance houses he's worked with and some of the fragrances that he's had a hand in designing or making, you know, he's worked with all sorts of people, including Frederic Malle. So a really, really good pedigree. So if we look at the fragrance itself, at the top you have ginger, you have cinnamon, and then you have cardamom. And then in the heart you have geranium, you have coffee blossoms, and then you have oud nuances. And then on the base you have vanilla absolute and roasted coffee. Now, of all of those, we will talk a little bit mostly about the oud nuances, and I admire Atkinsons for what they've done here. They've been completely honest about it. They're not selling these as oud perfumes, but what they are doing, I mean, it could be a little bit like jumping on a bandwagon, if you like, because obviously oud seems, everybody has an oud collection in their fragrance collections now. But Atkinsons have been quite honest about it. They've decided that they wanted to take what they thought was the kind of like the best of the ouds from, you know, Eastern perfumery and westernize it. Now, I love oud, and I'm sure some of you guys do too, because, you know, we talk about it quite a lot. But a lot of people don't, and they struggle with it. They struggle with realistic oud. They struggle with the unsanitized oud, or, you know, that real kind of olfactory experience that interesting ouds can give you. It can be animalic, it can be funky, it can be, you know, a bit barnyardy. It can even have this like blue cheese or medicinal vibe to it. And this all because, you know, oud's such a wonderful material, and it, you know, where it's farmed, how it's produced, which country the tree comes from. So what Atkinsons have done is they've taken oud and made a kind of a westernized version of it, something that's interesting and gives some depth and smells pretty cool. But what they've done is they've kind of made it more palatable for the Western nose. Well, that's the ethos behind it, and it does work with this one as well as the others. The oud is clean, and it just adds a little bit more depth and gravitas. It doesn't dominate the fragrance at all. The other notes do. So when you spray this, and I'm wearing it at the moment, but I will spray it again for the review. The first thing you'll note, it's very much like the Evody that I was talking about yesterday, is cinnamon jumps out at you quite strongly. Cinnamon, cardamom, they just work really, really well together. The ginger gives I don't know, it's difficult to describe. It gives a little bit of heat, which is quite a strange thing to get. But you get this kind of warm, spicy, unctuous vibe, which is then joined by the geranium. Now, the geranium sometimes can come across as a little rosy, but there's no real rose vibe at all from this. The coffee blossom and then the oud nuances blend in, and then it all meshes together, and that's where it really comes into its own. The vanilla absolute and the roasted coffee make this fragrance. It's the coffee, the little bit of bitterness that comes in to this whole proceeding that makes this warm, spicy, interesting, deep, exotic smell. And it's really, really, really nice. And the fact that I've been wearing this quite a lot in warmer weather, you know, this is not what this perfume is designed for. This is a winter perfume, and it's going to be amazing in the winter, but it just smells so good. There's almost like a dusty vibe to it as it dries down. The vanilla is there. It doesn't become over sweet. Well, it is sweet, don't get me wrong, but because you've got such a strong roasted coffee note, which stays with this perfume for its entire life, you're always picking up on the coffee vibe. It just gives you this warm, sweet, slightly bitter, woodsy, all-encompassing vibe as it dries down. And I did mention when I sampled it, there's a slight resemblance to Black Afghano in the dry down, that kind of sweet, vanilla-y, woodsy, dark vibe. And I think the coffee helps create that kind of facsimile. They're not as similar as I thought they were, in all honesty, but I can certainly see where I was coming from with the sample. Really, really good. Performance-wise, it's excellent. It's not too loud. It does project very strongly for the first hour or so, and it leaves a really intoxicating sillage, which I think will only get bigger as the environment you're in gets cooler. I think it will travel further in a less sort of humid or a less sort of oppressive environment. But it lasts and it lasts and it lasts. This is a good 10-hour fragrance, and it's just so. I mean, my wife even likes it, and again, this doesn't happen very often. So, you know, take that as you will. She's a pretty good barometer of a fragrance that other people will like, because I think, you know, I can't understand why people don't like everything I like. It's like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with me? But my wife doesn't like very much that I do like, so it's an interesting one. And if she's keen on it, then, you know, take that as a good one. But it is long-lasting. It is interesting, and it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of that Middle Eastern sweet vanilla hint of oud vibed fragrances out there. And again, you've got other houses that do a fragrance with coffee in as well, but I haven't found one yet that the coffee note actually carries all the way through the life of the fragrance. It tends to kind of, often the coffee vibe seems to be preloaded, so you get it at the top notes and it doesn't seem to transfer very well to the base, or, you know, it kind of disappears as the middle notes start to come into play. With this one, the coffee note is there all the way through. So you are, because we've got coffee in here, you are, and vanilla, you are kind of walking down to the gourmand world. So if you're not a fan of gourmands, then this may not be for you. But the other thing with gourmands that makes me laugh, you know, is every fragrance with a boozy note in it, does that make it a gourmand? Because, you know, or does coffee make a fragrance a gourmand? Because you drink booze and you drink coffee, you don't eat it. And I've always kind of associated gourmands more with food. So it's an interesting one to throw out. I'm pretty sure everyone that will say if there's a vanilla and alcohol or a coffee, it does become a gourmand. And for the purposes of the, you know, for the lack of argument, I would say that this does have a very gourmandish vibe to it. But it's lovely. It's perfectly interesting. It's perfectly fine, and anyone can wear this. I think it probably does suit maybe the more mature fragrance enthusiast. I'm not sure how the younger thrusters out there are going to like it, but it is sweet, and generally, and I know this is a massive generalisation, I do find your younger thrusters out there do tend to like a sweeter fragrance, and this is quite sweet. So you have this sort of really interesting, sweet, woodsy fragrance. So maybe the thrusters will enjoy it. I'm not sure. But I can tell you one thing, I'm really, really happy to have this in my collection, and I'm absolutely going to pound it when it's cooler, and I'm wearing it a lot more than I thought I would be in the warmer weather. But yeah, it's not freshy, it's not a summer fragrance at all, but I kind of like it. When you're wearing something heavy in warmer weather, I think you can pull it off if you're happy to, or you're confident to. Just moderate your sprays a little bit. Don't go so heavy on the trigger when it's hot. I think this is perfectly unisex. I think it's meant to be a masculine leaning fragrance, but again, if you like it, wear it. I think it'll be fabulous. I think you can wear it in any environment. Because it's coffee and not booze, it's perfect for work. It's an interesting one for the office. You wouldn't, you know, sit next to your colleagues and then have sort of questions about your, you know, slow descent into alcoholism because you're wearing a boozy fragrance. You're wearing a coffee fragrance, which is, if anything, makes you come across as quite alert and awake and alluring. So yeah, definitely. If you can sample it, do. Please sample this one. I think this is an outstanding fragrance and one that I'm really, really enjoying, and I think you will too. If you like you know, the notes that I've listed. Just though, going back to the oud nuances, don't be scared of that. This is not an overly oudy fragrance. This has not got any of the nasty elements that some people find within oud. I would like the oud turned up, but because the coffee there is so present, it just keeps it really, really interesting. As I say, you know, and I mentioned earlier in the review, there's lots and lots of fragrances out there that do this kind of vanilla-y, woodsy, oudy type thing. And I think it's the coffee note in this that stays with it the whole way through that just lifts it and makes it that little bit more interesting. So I really recommend that you sample this one. And if you can get it at a bargain price, go for it. Actually, saying that, don't go for it. I wouldn't recommend a blind buy on this one. I don't want to be responsible for you blind buying something that's going to potentially lose you money, because it is quite unique and you will need to smell it. So there you have it, an excellent fragrance from a wonderful house, certainly a house that you should be exploring, because they have some really, really good fragrances in their collection. I think there's something here for everyone, put it that way. And this one is certainly for me. So there you go. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Really appreciate you spending time with us and watching these videos. I'm trying to get as many, I know I say this every video, but I'm trying to get as many filmed as I can. So I'm certainly going to be filming every day this week. So hopefully we'll, you know, get the wheels in motion and churning the videos out for you guys to enjoy. Any questions or anything like that, please leave them below and we will come back to you. Have you tried any of the Atkinsons that you'd like to talk about? If you have, pop a comment down and we will sort it out. Or if not, have a look at us on Instagram and we can have a chat there. Anywho, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for your time and we shall see you on the next video. Cheers and bye.